This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, and I'm your host for this week's episode, Paul Jasley, filling in for Mike Rappin, who, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, is out on paternity leave for the next few months. Congratulations, Mike. Congratulations, Kelly. It's official. The inmates have taken over the asylum. No, we'll take care of the show while you're gone, Mike. Enjoy your leave. I'm, of course, not alone. I'm joined by two miniature marshmallows floating in a mug of hot cocoa. Kait Lamphere.
Hello.
And Daniel Martinez.
Hello.
So good to talk to you both about comics. Like I said, we will be hosting the show on our own for a few months. So, things won't change. You just won't hear Mike as often. Just get ready for his comeback. It's going to be hot and heavy when he comes back, I bet. So we have a special episode for this week, though. We have a Reading Challenge Theme of the Month episode. The theme for this month of February is feel-good comics. You know, those comfy, cozy comics that just warm your heart when you read them. Something familiar, just something comforting. I think we all need those, not only in winter, but just as life and politics and culture is these days. We just need something comforting sometimes. So some examples people have thrown out are books like Giant Days, Peanuts, Sarah's Scribbles, Mouse Guard, Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, we're going to be talking about some newspaper comic strips as well as comic books. We want to give a shout out to the conversations happening in the I Read Comic Books group on Goodreads and the Reading Challenge 2026 channel on Discord. A lot of people have shouted out their favorite comfy comics, but we have some picks of our own. I'm going to quit talking. I'll ask the two legally mandated questions I'm supposed to ask as host. That is, how have you been? How have comics been? I'm going to start with you, Danny.
Well, Paul, I've been doing very well. It's a very interesting theme, but before we dive into that, I do want to say this weekend was a little eventful for me because it's a release weekend for one of the games that I play, the trading card games.
Okay.
We got the second set of Riftbound for Spirit Forge, and it is crazy that this game is so popular and no one has it for sale. that is a shame. It's sold out everywhere. I was able to get one box, and I think that's all I'm going to get for a while. So, yeah, we'll get into that later, maybe. But other than that, it's been a rainy weekend here in Dallas, and when I looked at the theme, I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" Every time I read comics, I feel good. How am I supposed to narrow it down to just one thing?
Fair.
Luckily, our community had some great examples. And I was able to pull something that's kind of recent. It's called Youth Group from First Second. It is written by Jordan Morris with art by Bowen McCurdy. The story follows Kay, a cynical and a little gothy and a completely uninterested in joining the church, her church's youth group. She's expecting like awkward sing-alongs and forced positivity and sermons about temptation. And instead what she gets is an exorcism, because the clean-cut leaders of the youth group, Meg and Cortland, they aren't just wholesome teens. They are demon-hunting soldiers in a fight, for spirituality. So I thought, why not dig into this?
Do you know the theme is cozy, comfy comics? That does not sound cozy and comfy at all. I've seen The Exorcist, and it's not cozy.
Well, that would normally be the case, but this is a YA book, so it's actually they're demons and they're doing exorcisms, but it's actually kind of in a fun, quirky way. It's not the usual your Friedkin did not direct this book.
Okay. Yeah.
So what you get instead is a little bit of a story that Kate discovers she's somebody that the demons can't possess. So she's valuable to the group. And it's just a story more about Kay becoming friends with these people in this new role and trying to figure out her identity and having everybody kind of work together. So the tone of it is very fun. Although we do dive into the story very quickly. I think Jordan Morris writes these characters that feel like he kind of, maybe people from his life or something, like they feel like genuinely, like he's truly affectionate to them. You can just kind of feel the ensemble and the chemistry as the group kind of comes together and they get to know each other a little bit, because each one of them brings something different, right? Somebody's actually very spiritual and they are very clean cut. And then Kay is a little bit more rebellious, but they become friends and they start to kind of learn from each other. And I think that's what this book is really about, watching that dynamic develop. It's not a gritty horror story. It's more of a
Okay.
coming of age supernatural adventure. I think I saw somewhere that they called it a mix of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, kind of.
That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
I think that
Okay.
really fits for the story here.
Yeah.
Also, the art is a big part of what makes this book like this. It's very charming. The style is expressive, very exaggerated, and full of personality in a lot of ways. Even
Hmm.
during the moments of a demonic possession or the exorcism, like the visuals are never oppressive. They never become dark, and instead it's just like a playful energy. Like, it's a fun exorcism as opposed to uh, your run of the
The
mill
movie.
gnarly
Yeah.
exorcism
Yeah.
from that grunge era of the 2003 remakes of horror movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting because like as soon as you described it, I was like, that does not sound cozy at all. But I'm looking at the artwork; it is very, yeah, very like friendly, very like that YA vibe. So yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, I definitely I think it's almost as if you dropped the characters from Giant Days into
Mhm.
like a mnemonic story. Like, how would they handle it? It feels very much in that. If that sells you on the book, I think that'll do it. So, yeah,
All right.
this is definitely aimed for a younger audience that I'm used to, but I still had a pretty
Mhm.
good time with it. It fit with the theme, so I figured let's get into it and explore how do you make an exorcism not super scary. Like, it's spooky, but not like super intense kind of spooky. So
Sure.
Maybe a cozy fall read.
I think so. Yeah,
Nice.
put on my
Nice.
witch hat,
Yeah.
crack up in the book.
Yeah, read it while the trick-or-treaters come around.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way to take the theme. Like, I think in my mind, it's a different theme, which I'll get to when I talk to my book. But like, there is something like that YA genre feels like the most cozy, kind of comfortable comic. It's like a book you can kind of pick up and just enjoy as it is. It's not part of a larger continuity. It's kind of a standalone story, I'm assuming. So it's like that is really always very like cozy and comfy, especially something like maybe you wouldn't have picked up on your own. There's something charming about that as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I I think the other coziest part of this, it's something more that it's like I was able to get this through my library because the
There you
Houston
go.
library, the Greater Houston Library, has a program where if you live in Texas, you can get a card from them, and their selection is so much wider than my local library. So now I have access to more things. So that's another thing that kind of makes it like a
Mhm.
feel good comic, that I was able to get it through a service and the library. And you guys know we love the library in this show, and just the fact
Yep.
that I have access to so many more comic books and graphic novels and audiobooks. I'm also listening. This is not related to the comic, but I'm listening to Becky Lynch's audiobook because they had it available. So
There you
like,
go.
yeah, you could, the libraries has everything and anything that you might need. So go check them out. I'm sure there's programs like that in other states, or I hope there's programs like that
Mhm.
in. If Texas has a nice program like that, I'm telling you, there's got to be nice programs in your state as well.
I was say one of my favorite like library moments is like we have the interlibrary loan here in Michigan, so I'm able to check out. You can get books from every library in Michigan and have them sent to your local library to pick up. And a few years ago, I did that to get the Walt Simonson Thor collection, which is like
Mhm.
if you've ever seen that hardcover collection, it weighs about 80 pounds. Like it's a huge thing of comics. And I went to the library to pick that up, and I can the way the library is set up, I can kind of see it on the shelf behind the desk. I'm like here to pick up this book, and I saw the librarian's face, like his eyes got so big when he saw the size of the book I was checking out. I was like, what is this? It weighs as much as Mjolnir itself when he picked that up off the shelf. It was very funny to have that moment. So yeah,
You got to be worthy to pick it up.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I love that. I love that adds a whole other dimension. There is something about that going to the library, kind of browsing the shelves, finding a random book, and just that is the definition of a cozy comic to me in some regards. So that's awesome. I'm glad you like that book, Danny.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. But Kate, what about you? What did you? How are you doing? What did you read?
Yeah, I am doing all right. The weather in Michigan has gotten a little bit warmer. We'd really gotten dumped on with cold weather and snow and icy roads for almost a few months, I think. And now it was like 50 degrees yesterday. I went for a walk.
It's great.
The trail that I take is just compacted snow from all of the people who've been walking anyway. It's nice to see that people are still getting out. And I walked to my library and I picked up a hold. The best way to spend a Saturday. But I recently read My Neighbor Totoro. That's going to be familiar to movie fans. This is by Hayao Miyazaki, and the English translation is by Jim Hubert. This is a film comic, and I have this beautiful, complete hardcover edition that's kind of like a digest size. And I believe my brother gifted this to me. It's a great find for a gift. And if you're not familiar with the film of My Neighbor Totoro from Studio Ghibli, it's about two young girls and their dad who move to a new home to be closer to their mom, who is in a nearby hospital. The dad is a professor, and he's setting up this new house. So the older daughter, who's still very young, Satsuki, she looks after her young sister Mai when she's not at school herself. And their neighbor Granny, who is an older woman, helps out and tells them stories about the local forest spirits, the house spirits. And Mai and Satsuki eventually meet trolls, I think that they're referred to in the English translation. And Mai calls the largest one Totoro, which is where the name of the movie and the comic come from. Totoro helps out these kids a couple of times in the movie, and there's also like this shy neighbor boy. We get some good reactions from him. There's some little cute suit sprites that people who like Spirited Away would recognize. There's also like this cat bus, like an actual bus that is also a cat, that is reminiscent to me of like Alice in Wonderland, like the Cheshire Cat. The movie is just beautiful. And of course, the comic book picks that up. And this adaptation reads right to left like a manga, which I would expect since the film is Japanese. And as far as I can tell, like the panels of this comic are just straight out of the film. The art is full color. The panels are mostly horizontal rectangles like film frames are, but the layout is still like dynamic like any other comic book. Like there's a good variety of small panels that show movement, medium panels that show an interaction or a reaction. And then there are full spread panels that take up the whole 2 pages, and they show like the most significant or the most beautiful frames from the film. And I really like the way that they like selected those panels. I think that they did a good job determining those. Something interesting about this comic is that like we've talked about the use of sound effects on this show before, and I really enjoyed the use of them in this book. They're kind of like, they seem to be incorporated with the art, but you can tell that they're like added later. Like the film frames are a little bit, I don't know, maybe blurry or something. Like it's an older movie. And then the sound effects are like nice and crisp on top of it, but they must have been like integrated into the art because they're not translated in English. They're in katakana, which is one of the Japanese alphabets. There was a comprehensive glossary to the English translations of those sound effects in the rear matter, but for the most part, the sounds were like pretty obvious. They'd be placed near an exhaust for a puttering car or near feet of somebody who's running. And the design of the script itself on the page was also pretty significant, like whether it was like small or large, or sometimes it was stretched out really long with like a line in the middle. Like if Totoro was yelling, for example, or there was like a long like wind howl. A couple of times there were sound effects that translated as like the sound of a bow or the sound of silence. And that was something that I see in fully translated English manga that like emphasizes what somebody is doing rather than it actually being a sound. But it still gave me a chuckle that they like included it in the manga and also like made sure to translate it in the glossary. It gave me a tickle. There were also a few times that it rained in the story. And while those sections did have sound effects for the rain, like just looking at the art, I was like, I could hear the rain, like almost like it was literally raining. Like I could like hear the downpour in the ground and then the leaves. So I appreciate the English glossary, but you could definitely read this book without like flipping back and forth every panel, basically. But in general, like for me, it was really fulfilling to be able to linger on like specific moments in this book, like because you if you watch the film, it really books. There's a lot of action. It really jumps
Mhm.
from like some like one thing to another. Studio Ghibli does a really nice job at pacing their films, but it's still really nice to just be able to like pause on a page or a couple of panels. So like some of the things that I appreciated that I could just like enjoy for a couple of minutes rather than it moving on to the next thing immediately was how Totoro
Sure.
flies around on a spinning top like a whimsical Baba Yaga. There are panels when Mai tries to take corn to her mom in the hospital because Granny said it would heal her. There are panels when the dad and Satsuki find Totoro's tree with Mai, and like, of course, they've never seen Totoro yet, but they still have this beautiful moment talking about when trees and people used to be friends. Like this giant tree. It's absolutely massive. It even dwarfs like the dad, and they just have this moment appreciating nature. There's also, I noticed, I don't think I ever noticed this in the film. In the comic, I noticed that Setsuki looks like the dad, like her hairstyle is the same. And she helps him look after Mai. Like she's like the dad's helper. And then Mai looks like the mom, like the way that their bangs look similar, the shape of their, like their forehead in particular. And Mai is the one who is more insistent about visiting her mother in the hospital and her mother coming home to stay with them. So this was just a really great way to revisit My Neighbor Totoro. But like I've seen the film a couple of times, but I'm like very confident that somebody who's never seen the film would be able to follow this story, and it would be a great first way for somebody to experience it.
Because that was going to be my question. So Studio Ghibli is something that's a pop culture black hole for me. I know nothing about it. I recognize the images. I know what the style is. I much like manga, I have very little interest in anime, so I've avoided it. This sounds like something like maybe a gateway for me. I can read the comic without sitting through the movie and kind of get the same story, basically.
Yeah,
You know?
for sure. Yep.
Cool. Great,
Yeah,
great.
this is one of the ones I haven't seen, so that I wonder if maybe I could try reading the comic first and then going back and watching the film and how that would be different. But I didn't even know they made these, so that's very cool. Like just seeing
Yeah.
Ghibli art on paper is cool.
Yeah,
So
I was surprised. I think I opened this as a gift, and I was like, "Wow, I didn't even know that this exists." But I mean, as far as I can remember, it hits every story beat. You get like at least a little piece of every scene. It was really, I mean, it's as well paced as the movie is. I think it was really beautiful,
Mhm.
like beautifully produced book.
Nice. I had no idea that they would do these. So it literally is just like a comic book or manga version of the film.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
okay. Yeah. Which kind of is more appealing. Like I think I will talk about my relationship with manga later in the episode, but like this might be the gateway for that as well. Maybe this is the year where I finally watch some anime.
yeah.
When I was this is the kind of funny story. When I was in college, I took Japanese for a couple semesters, and I feel like there was like maybe 3 or 4 of us in the class who were not interested in anime. We were just interested in Japanese culture. But there were a couple, you know, when you're in college, it's the end of the semester, you've already taken the exam. There's going to fill up a couple of classes with just watching a movie, and like inevitably people would wanted to watch some anime. I think it was like Howl's Moving Castle, and after about 20 minutes, like I'm leaving. I got up and like just left. I'm like, I think I'm done with this. So I was young and dumb back then. I'm more mature, and my tastes have changed. Now it might be time to go back and watch those movies.
Yeah, Howl's Moving Castle changes so much from the beginning to the end. Like, there's another
Okay.
Baba Yaga reference in that movie.
Yes, I remember. I think I remember that part. So yeah. That's funny.
oh, I wish I knew Japanese so I could just watch my anime a week in advance before without having to wait for the. I don't want to wait for the dub, but I also don't want to read the subtitles. Like I just want to know what they're saying. You know
what they're saying. Yeah. That's one reason to study Japanese, and then you can also watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and just get all the promos. So there you go.
Oh yeah.
Is that what you do?
I don't know that well. Again, I know a little bit. I still retain a little bit. And I feel like every year around January, I'll download the language app to try to get back into Japanese, and then eventually by March, I've stopped doing it. So
Yeah.
I know enough. I know a little bit to get around, but yeah, definitely not fluent at all. So
By the end of the G4 tournament, Paul's done learning Japanese.
Yeah, I need to like catch up and so I can listen to promos on that. So, I mean, I love that you both have different books for this. I took a very different approach to this theme as well. When I think of like a cozy comic, I want something I can just pick up and just open to a random page. I don't need any context, just something that's going to like get me through the moment that I'm in. And I kind of gravitated toward like newspaper comics. I was a huge Calvin Hobbes fan as a kid, and the comic I'm very into now is Nancy, the classic comic created by Ernie Bushmiller. Who Nancy's having a whole resurgence over the past couple of years, which I love to see. Like Nancy's, I think, is such a unique and distinct comic. For those of you who are not familiar, Nancy was a comic book or a comic strip in the newspaper created back in 1933. She originally appeared as a side character in the comic strip Fritzy Ritz, which is kind of like a generic like model comic, kind of like Blondie, that era of comic strip comics. And then Nancy became so popular as a side character, they created her own strip in 1938. And it's still going today. We have like almost 90 years of Nancy comics, which is kind of amazing. When Ernie Bushmiller, the creator, passed away in 1982, you had different cartoonists kind of took over the daily strip. And I think, like I said, it's been a resurgence of Nancy in the past couple of years. In 2018, a cartoonist going by the name Olivia James took over the strip and kind of became like an internet meme culture kind of thing. Like they were posting the strips on Instagram. So I think more people kind of became aware of Nancy. And then as of this January 1st, Caroline Cash, who we all know and love from doing the Pee Pee Poo Poo comics, took over the Daily Nancy comic. So if you read Nancy now, it's Caroline Cash. It's still great. So I actually don't remember reading Nancy when I was a kid. I think it wasn't in the newspapers I got. I was definitely more of a Calvin Hobbes fan back then. But over the past few years, I've gotten into Nancy because of Fantagraphics. They've been publishing collections of Nancy, specifically focusing on the Ernie Bushmiller years because he has so much material there. And they've collected in various forms. They've done like a new kind of reprint program. The first one of which is called Nancy Wears Hats. I got this for Christmas. And this collects all of the daily comic strips from 1949 through 1950. It's a ton of comics and it's great. You can just pick it up and like I said, you can just read random comic strips. And there's something about like Nancy that it feels like a proto version of the dad joke. Like there's something, it's a visual dad joke when you read a Nancy comic. Like you've got 2 or 3 panels of setup and then a punchline that is usually more visual than like a spoken word or like a written joke. It's kind of like a visual punchline and it's either makes you laugh or groan because it's so obvious or like unique. And there's something about that like very punchy, short storytelling that I really appreciate. And like Ernie Bushmiller's artwork, which I think the other creators who have taken over the strip kind of continue, it's so simple and precise. Like there's something very almost like scientific and mathematical about his artwork that's like there's not a stray out of place line. Like everything's so precise. Nancy looks the same in every panel and every page. Her buddy Sluggo, like he looks the same. Just it's so just like well drawn and well paced, which I think is why Nancy's kind of become celebrated over the past couple of years. Like I think there's been a resurgence because in 2009, I believe there was a book that Fantagraphics published called How to Read Nancy, which is like a very thorough examination. They take like one Nancy comic strip and they break down every aspect of it, like each panel, each character, the way the word balloons are placed, the way the sound effects are placed. It's like they're explaining how comics as a medium work through Nancy because it's so well done and well drawn. So, which I mean, makes it sound more complex than it is. What is great about Nancy is that you don't notice that when you're reading it. It's like just a fun, simple comic. But when you're able to kind of like look at how it functions as a element of cartooning, how Ernie Bushmiller's style works, it's really complex and interesting. And I think that's why I find it so compelling. Like you can just read a bunch of Nancy comic strips, have a couple chuckles at her and Sluggo being these precocious kids who get into these like insane like situations, like the most like wholesome hijinks and mischief you can think of. And the way they get out of these situations is the punchline. But it's drawn so precisely and beautifully, and and it's like perfect comics in a sense. So like that has been my go-to lately. Whenever I need something just to kind of distract me or get me away from looking at my phone and doom scrolling, Nancy's been my comfort. And not just the Ernie Bushmiller stuff. I love seeing Caroline Cash's new take on the character on social media now. So it's great stuff. Either of you have ever read Nancy stuff? Or are you at least aware of it?
Yeah, I used to read Nancy like as one of the 4 or 5 comics in my local paper that I'd read like every week.
Nice. Okay, great.
My local newspaper that I used to pick up at the bus station when I was going to college was one of those free ones, and it had the Boondocks, but no Nancy.
Okay. No Nancy.
But I am a big fan of Cash, so I follow her on Instagram. So like, they're just there. Nancy is just now on Instagram, so like every day I'll log in, and I'll eventually stumble into the latest Nancy comic. And it's really fun. Like, it's really cool to see just how simple 4 panels of a story, and then on Sundays you get the big color version. I don't even, if you had asked me last year like where you had to go to read a Nancy comic, I was like, I don't know, it's got to be out there somewhere. But without Googling or looking it up, I couldn't tell you. So now I'm glad that it's being delivered right into my face. Amongst the doom scrolling, I get a little stop for Nancy.
It's a brief like reprieve when you're doom scrolling to see a Nancy comic. Yeah, maybe that's part of it too. Yeah,
I was gonna say like watching Nancy and Sluggo go to Philly for a week was really funny. So it's cool how the creators kind of inject their own, because I think that's where Caroline Cash lives at the moment. So it's really fun to see them inject kind of like their own personal spin and touch and their own little jokes into the strip. Like, even if I had never read Nancy, it doesn't matter. Like, I get it. I get the joke.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why it's still like going on to this day. Like each creator's brought their own voice and style to it. And it's kind of cool to see the Ernie Bushmiller stuff presented the way Fantagraphics does. Cause like you get like the daily strips. So there's like, in this collection I have, the Nancy Wears Hats, there's like it's like a whole week of strips where like Sluggo gets a job working at the local music store, selling instruments. And it's like every panel is like every strip is like the punchline is like something about involved with that. So it's like, even though there's not like a recurring storyline, there's like a through line sometimes. Like, okay, this is the week where all the jokes are music based, or like something like that. And like, there's stuff where like Bushmiller is like meta, where it's like, I think there's one where it's like, it's snowing a bunch. So you see the snow filling up the panel, so that by the end the panel is just white, and the joke is like, I guess the guy drawing this comic is too lazy, so there's like meta commentary going on, which feels very cutting edge for like in the 1940s, 1950s. So I think, again, if you were interested in comics as a medium, how they work, Nancy's a great thing to look at. There's a recent one that Caroline Cash did where she basically just did the panel where there's 3 rocks, right? Maybe you saw this, where it's like people have been waiting for this panel, and that's a reference to the way Ernie Bushmiller, a lot of times in the background, he wouldn't draw like very detailed backgrounds. He'd just give you enough to put you in that place where it's taking place. And it's a recurring joke where he would just draw like 3 rocks. It's like the minimum number of rocks to imply a pile. It's not 1 rock. It's not 2 rocks. 4 rocks might be too many to draw. So 3 rocks is like, that's a pile of rocks in the background. And in fact, there's a biography about Bushmiller that came out a few years ago, and that's the title. It's just 3 rocks, because that's like the shorthand for the economical cartooning style that he innovated. So I love reading this stuff. This book is always on my coffee table at home, so I can just open it up. Even if I'm rereading it, it's a fun little reprieve. So that, to me, that's the most comforting comic I could think of for this episode.
I think that's a really fun interpretation of the theme, Paul. So kudos for that. Yeah.
I have a few collections of Garfield and of Better for Better for Worse. And those were two those were 2 of the other comics that I'd have to read every Sunday when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin and Hobbes is big for me. I think, I was reading superhero comics at the time when I was a kid, but also like, I feel like I got a better examination or example of like how comics work as a medium from Calvin and Hobbes. Like Bill Watterson, like the daily strips were fun, but on Sunday morning you'd get the that was always the top comic on the page in the Sunday Funnies section, and he usually took up the whole first half of the page. It was like this big illustration, more panels. He'd be more detailed, and like I remember reading it as a kid, being like, "Oh, you can play with the way panels work. You don't have to draw like a panel outline. You can have like a bigger panel." And like it helped me understand comics as a medium, even though I wasn't thinking that at the time. You know what I mean? You just kind of absorb it when you read it. And I think maybe we don't talk enough about that era or that style of serialized comic strips for that example of the art form, you know?
Yeah. And I've been to a convention where one of the artists, they used to do the Spider-Man comic strip. I don't know if that's still going on, but like he had originals from the strips, and I looked at it and I was like, well, this doesn't look like a comic book page layout. Like, and then we kind of talked a little bit about how he worked on Spider-Man for a while, and I was like, oh, that's because condensing a Spider-Man story into like 4 or 5 panels, however many you get in a newspaper strip, as opposed to that, like that's a whole different set of skills than your comic writer has. So really interesting. I don't remember if I bought it. I have to go back through my original art to see if I did end up buying one, because I just thought it was neat. Mm-hmm. That it was a different.
That's so cool.
Like it's the thing that I love in a different format, but it's not that different. It's just like in a different delivery method.
I mean, last time I was at my local comic shop, I stumbled across a collection of the daily Judge Dredd comics. So like for a while in England, one newspaper had like a daily Judge Dredd strip, or maybe it was weekly, but it was whatever. Like, and like if you read Judge Dredd in 2000 AD, like those chapters are just like 6 or 8 pages. Like it's very quick, short snippets. And somehow they even reduced that. So like there wasn't a recurring story. Like each Dredd strip was a standalone story that had its own conclusion, beginning, middle, and end, on like one small little comic strip. They would reduce the storytelling, and it's kind of amazing because it's still John Wagner and Alan Grant who are writing Judge Dredd for 2000 AD, and they were able to like, well, okay, we'll take this 6-page Dredd story, reduce it down to like 10 panels to be in the newspaper. It's the economy of storytelling is stunning in that stuff. So I've been reading that as well. Judge Dredd maybe not as comforting given the state of our world. It's a little too real at times, but yeah, it's fun to kind of read that stuff as well, because you can just read a bunch of them back to back, as a standalone stories.
We need a Judge Dredd meets Marmaduke crossover.
Yes, Danny, we're going to speak that into existence right now. That's amazing. So yeah, if you have any other ideas about comforting comics, head over to the Discord, head over to the Goodreads. There's great conversation about all that over there. I think we all need something comforting these days to get us through. So yeah, I'm glad we all picked something very, very different for this topic. It's a very broad discussion. So, but we can move on. We talked about comics we read. We're going to talk about comics we're going to read very soon. Kait, I'm going to start with you. What is on the top of your pile for this week?
Yeah, I have Carnet de Voyage by Craig Thompson. This is the book that I walked to the library yesterday to pick up. And Craig Thompson is most famously the author of Blankets. I think a lot of people who read comics have heard of that book. Yep. I read his newest book, Ginseng Roots, last year, and I loved that. It was part memoir. It was also partially about like the ginseng trade and the history of ginseng. But that book made me determined to read like as much by Craig Thompson as I could. So I got Habibi out of my library around the first of the year, and it took me a couple of weeks to get through it. That is a pretty long work. It's very emotionally complex. So Habibi is about a girl who takes in a toddler, raises him. They get separated for many years, and they find one another again as adults. There's a lot of trigger warnings for that book: poverty, assault, racism. It's very heavy. I'm also really glad that I read it. It was really moving, and I'm glad that I'm done with it. But I'm talking about that book because Craig Thompson then went on to write a travelogue about his research trip for Habibi. So he traveled around France, Spain, the Alps, and Morocco to research that book, and he kept a number of sketchbooks along the way, and then he ended up making this book, Carnet de Voyage. And I love travelogues. And then, as I said, I loved Ginseng Roots, which was the one other work by him that I've written that was part memoir. So this one's part memoir. I'm hoping that this will be a little bit more optimistic, whimsical, maybe.
Sure.
More up my alley. So I'm glad that I was able to get this through the library.
Nice. I've not read this yet. I really liked Blankets the first time I read it, like years and years ago. Craig Thompson, again, a very economical sort of like cartoonist. Like his style is very, straightforward. There are parts of Habibi that are like beautifully illustrated, although I had a really hard time with that book because of the subject matter. Not an easy read, but it's a beautifully illustrated book. So I would be very curious to check this out. I had no idea this came out already. So I will go right to my local library and put a hold on that for sure.
Yeah.
When Kait returns it, then it'll move over. They'll move it over to your library.
Yeah.
We need to save that other one for our follow-up episode, Feel Bad Comics.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think Craig Thompson, he's a very unique illustrator, very unique cartoonist. So like, it's very cool to see him do like a travelogue, which I think is, Blankets is such an autobiographical comic, so maybe that's a better, venue for his style in some ways.
I feel like his style has changed through the years too. I mean, I know that like he's had issues with his hands from working with ginseng, as it turns out, if you read that book.
Okay.
But yeah, like comparing Blankets, which was his first big work, to comparing Ginseng Roots, which is his latest big work, and then like this, like Habibi and this book are like in the middle between those two. And I feel like the art style between the three books is actually quite a bit different.
Okay. Yeah. It's always interesting to see that when a cartoonist, especially someone who does their own sort of self-published or like writing and illustrating themselves, like to see their artwork change, sometimes for, personal, like physical reasons as well. So yeah. Interesting. Danny, what about you? What is on the top of your pile?
So on the top of my pile, and before that, I did want to mention a book. It's not on the top of my pile because I did get a chance to read it in advance. But if you guys don't know, DC Vertigo is back. Last week, we got the new book by Dennis Camp. What's it called? Bleeding Hearts? Yeah, called Bleeding Hearts.
Yeah.
But this next week, we're getting a new book by Kyle Starks and Steve Pugh, reuniting the team that did Peacemaker Tries Hard. And they're working on a book called End of Life number 1. It's a spy story, but told through a Kyle Starks type of way. So if you enjoy Kyle Stark writing, I think you want to pick that up. But the book that I am going to talk about, Universal Monsters, The Phantom of the Opera number 1. This is a new book from the Universal Monsters collection from Image Skybound, written by Tyler Boss, with art by Martin Simmons, who also worked on the Dracula adaptation for Image Skybound. This is the first of 4 issues. Most of these books have been 4 issues, which I think is a great size and for pacing and the format. And then the collections turn out really well once they're all done. A horrifying new vision of the story you only think you know. After a series of violent crimes racks the Paris Opera House, Christine Dubois' career is in chaos. But the show must go on, and Christine will discover that no one, especially the mysterious voice whispering in the eaves, is what they seem. As an old friend returns to investigate these attacks, Christine will find out there's no escaping the Phantom of the Opera. So I love these Universal stories. This is actually the one that I'm not very familiar with. I'm not a big musical person, or at least I wasn't a big musical person. I think I've gotten more into it later on in life. Just like we're gonna get Paul into manga, same difference there. We just gotta find the right one. So I'm not familiar with the story at all. Like I've never seen a movie about it, so I'm very excited. Martin Simmons, of course, beautiful art. Amazing. And Tyler Boss, I think he's just he's got a very distinct writing style. He just finished his own creator-owned book, at Image that was also about crime, and
Okay.
things get really weird at some points. So I'm interested to see how this new take on this, and also very interesting that they would do Phantom of the Opera before like The Wolfman or something like that, which I feel
Yeah.
has a little more
Yeah.
cachet in the Universal Monsters pantheon.
Yeah, I mean, the Phantom of the Opera is kind of a fascinating thing because it's a novel that comes out, I think, in the early 1900s, and then it becomes like a early silent film. Everyone recognizes the Lon Chaney version of the character. That's where the Universal like monster connection comes in. And then in the 80s, they do the musical version, which becomes a huge hit. So like, there's multiple different versions of that story, but I feel like everyone picks their lane. Like there's people that only like the musical version, people that only like the Lon Chaney version. I don't know if people still reading the novel at this point because it's so old, but it's a very interesting inclusion. It feels out of place in the rest of the monsters. He's not really a monster. He's just, a guy with a messed up face that lives in the opera house. So I'm actually pretty curious about this. My girlfriend is a huge musical theater fan, and like Phantom of the Opera is her favorite one. So I know the music. I'm sure if I pick up this comic, I'll put the soundtrack on while I'm reading it, so I get that musical accompaniment to the comic as well. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear what you think about it, Danny.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Also, I guess for people listening, if your significant other is into musicals, this is how you get them into comics. Like if you've always wanted to get them into comics, like this is a good place to do it if that's the hook.
Go.
So Paul's gonna have to report back on this, see if he got everyone to read this.
See if it takes.
But yeah, I'm very excited. They've done such a good job with these adaptations, or retellings, or whatever they end up being.
Yeah,
you guys keep talking about these Universal Monsters books. This might be the one that actually gets me to read one of them.
There we go. See,
let's do it.
The Phantom of the Opera. So yeah, before I get to my pick, I want to shout out our Discord picks. We got Nick, who's also doing the proof listing on this episode. He will be reading Death Fight Forever #1, and also want to give a shout out to the newest member of our Patreon, issue number 3, aka Brad. Thank you for joining the Patreon. Again, that helps keep the show going. It helps finance our bonus Patreon episodes. We really appreciate all of our Patreons. Go to patreon.com/IRCB podcast for more information if you want to join up. So early in the episode, I mentioned my tangled relationship with manga. It's a recurring joke on this podcast. I don't know anything about manga. It's a mysterious black hole of my knowledge of comics. And this might be the year I finally jump in. And I decided, I've read a few things. It's usually like older manga, more classic stuff. And I kind of figured, I was at the library recently. I stumbled across this book called A Drifting Life by Yoshihiro Tatsumi. It is 840 pages long. So I was like, it stands off the shelf. I grabbed it. I've heard this title before. I recognize the cover image. It is a celebrated manga, and it's an autobiographical manga that covers Tatsumi's life from the years 1945 to 1960. So it's him as a teenager being interested in manga, and then his early career as a mangaka. He originally had serialized this in Japanese magazines in the late 80s to the early 2000s, and then drawn in quarterly, translated it, and published this giant 840-page version of it in 2009. And I kind of figured, what a better way to get into manga than a book that is about manga as an art form. It's an autobiographical book, which I already like anyway. I love autobiographical comics. So having a book that explores that genre or style of comics in itself might be the best way to get into it. So it is a pretty big tome. I'm also trying to read Moby Dick right now at the same time. I'm just picking the biggest books I can find to take up all of my time. So I will report back probably in a couple months when I finally finish this bad boy. I'll have to do a couple, renew my loan from the library to finish it. So yeah.
I gotta say, the idea of publishing an autobiographical book serialized for 20 years seems pretty insane. Like, I'm not gonna give you the whole story. If you want to figure out what happened to this person later on in life, you have to tune in every week for 20 years, and we're gonna, so That's great.
Yeah.
When I saw you pull out that book, I was like, what is happening? Paul, that is not manga. That is a phone book.
Yeah, exactly. It's huge. And again, I knew of it. I've heard other people, like comic artists, talk about it and praise it. So when I saw it at the library, it almost was like, there it is, like this huge tome that I can tackle. And then after that, I will be a manga fan, right? It's like a big hill to climb over. I'm not going to read One Piece, but I can read 840 pages of this autobiographical comic, right?
That's the equivalent of the big chunk of One Piece. So you're on your way.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll see. I think it might be an interesting challenge to get through this. So yeah, and then I would definitely report back on the Discord and on the show about my dipping my toes into manga. And then now I have Kait telling me I can read versions of anime. It's like, all right, this might be the year. So
I like that we're all kind of getting into other interests. Like I'm finally dipping into books, and like, you know, Kate's been reading some superhero stuff, and like we're all just like, this is cool. You get into it, and we're all kind of getting to each other's stuff. So I love that about
it's only taken 10 years of doing a podcast to finally expand our horizons. So here we are. We'll do an all Batman show very soon. It'll be great. Everyone will be all aboard. No, this has been a great conversation. Again, if any of you listeners have recommendations for some other cozy comics, things that get you through the hard times of life, please jump on the Discord or shoot us an email. We love hearing recommendations from listeners. So I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank Danny and Kait for joining me today. I want to thank Nick for doing the proof listening. I want to thank Mike for trusting us to carry on the show while he's gone. I appreciate that. Thank you to Zander for editing the show, of course. I want to thank you for listening. And until next time, remember, comics are good, and so are you.